The title reads old Genshin players' thoughts, but I mean old as an account creation date, not old as a non.
Good heaven!
First, I want to explain my perspective a little bit. I want to talk about gachas as a whole to do this. I grew up for various reasons without access to Pokemon, and my substitute was this little Nexon gacha called Monster Squad. I never had Dark Evil Things Awakened in Me by Lopunny, because instead I had Dark Evil Things Awakened in Me by Choco Pinky instead. And then we had my goat Phoenatrix, absolutely clear as Moltres, no question. Now, Monster Squad shut down in 2016. However, a year later, I'd enter my next gacha craze, that being Fire Emblem Heroes in 2017 as a day one player. Technically, in between these two games, I'd play a few amount of gachas, but this was the first one that I was seriously invested into. Like, enough to drop $1,000 in a span of 4 years before I dropped the game in the next year, kinda serious. Oops. For a while, I considered Fate to be the single best mobile game around. However, in the past few years, it's become the perfect emblem of what makes a game bad. Power creep and terrible anti-consumer practices causing most of the damage to the game's integrity. The current state of Genshin is very, very divisive, and while I'm certainly in no position to address anything, so to speak, I can still voice my perspective because everyone else is, after all, voicing theirs. It's my turn with the talking stick. Now that my little Gotham Gacha backstory is over, I want to cover one of the more heated topics of Genshin conversations. The topic in question being Abyss HP inflation. Now, I've actually sort of done this already, making a video with a pretty provocative title. It was not super well received. That said, if you've seen that video, you might be surprised to hear that I'm okay with the Abyss HP inflation. Let me start by saying I understand both sides of the issue, and I think there's validity to both sides. Regardless of the game, one of the biggest concerns in gacha is power creep completely invalidating old characters. As such, one of the two foremost arguments for those pro HP inflation is that in its 4.5 years, Genshin hasn't yet gotten to that point. Sure, some characters have lost a little viability, and cryo characters in particular have fallen off extremely hard. But even still, no matter who you want to on-field in the Abyss, you can, and you can still get a perfectly fine clear. That said, however, there's a big difference between how much support you need for on-field Mavlika and how much support you need for on-field Diluc. Meaning, between which one you want to use, there's a big difference in currency spend. Meaning there's a big difference in money spend. Furthermore, if you had a team that once worked but no longer does, that can be pretty disheartening, even if any of those given characters can currently work in their own team comps. So it is a matter of not being able to use all of your favorites together anymore. However, I don't think it's entirely fair to use the oldest of Abysses as a baseline. I wasn't in the Abyss at the time, but when Ayaka was meta and during Sumer's year and all of that, from what I've seen, the Abysses were a little easy if anything. I think we have to consider that, sure, the Abyss is currently undoubtedly harder. Hell, it might be a little too hard. But we as players have also grown so massively in strength, not just through our available characters, but also largely through new artifacts as well. I do think the numbers are being cranked a little too fast though. What I'm not a fan of, however, are any hard regional requirements to clear any given boss in Abyss. I do think Night Soul and the massive amount of HP inflation we got with Natlan, that's too much together even if both are circumventable. Is it too hard to circumvent these requirements is the question. And that brings me into the next major point of contention. How much difficult is too difficult? The answer is, I don't really know. There doesn't feel like there's a right answer for this because it'll vary so heavily from person to person. Some people absolutely hate the Abyss and would get rid of it if it meant getting the rewards faster. Other people would get rid of the rewards if it meant more Abyss. For what it's worth, I do think that the Abyss, for a while, has felt like a haves versus haves not deal, where any player with the right combination of tools finds it a breeze, but otherwise it's a pain. But I also can't think of any solution to that problem, none that wouldn't cause more harm than good at least. All in all, I think we need to remember that Genshin is a gacha game. As much as I love gacha games, for the pros of perpetual content, you take all of the cons of the gacha ecosystem with you. All things considered, I'm really happy with how mihoyo has retroactively kept nearly all of their characters afloat, even if using my ayaka requires I pull a Scafier. It's at a rate that I'm okay with, maybe one new character a year for my mains, if that, and plus it keeps using those old mains interesting. It's part of why I don't want character ults, because I don't want ults to become an excuse for power creep. I'm no mihoyo executive, but I'd wager that they balance Genshin like this because of how much they spend on and reuse every single character. But ults, ironically enough, might be an outlet to power creep, because all of those spent resources would become reusable for those new shiny versions of these characters. Sure, it means that my glorious goat Noelle will forever be buns, Loki. But it also means that I don't have to pull on a second Ayaka to play as Ayaka. I can just play as Ayaka. Enough glazing mihoyo though. Let me talk about some things that I do think need improvements. In all actuality though, the Abyss is really an exception to an otherwise extremely casual experience. Most of my complaints with that game resolve around that casual experience, trying to make that casual experience better. Overflow resin, that's a big one. Where is it? Talent domains, material domains. Why are they still only available on selective days? It's things like this that don't really make sense, especially as their other titles have phased these things out. Overworld NPCs, please! I've been wanting it for years now. I know we had Traveler's Tales, and I just really hope that they don't drop the idea for whatever reason. All of the things that I want to see in this game, really, are things that are so incredibly easy to implement that would massively improve the experience. To me, Genshin is an incredibly casual game, a game that I absolutely love because I love its world. It is so infuriating to finish a world quest, only for all of the characters to just disappear on the spot. Why? Genshin's casual nature, funnily enough, leads to the next point of contention. The Wuthering Waves issue. Let me say that while I don't play the game, I don't have any problems with the game or its players. Actually, I think this entire debate between both sides, if you can even call it a debate, I think it's really pointless. Nonetheless, I'm gonna give my thoughts on animations, because I think this is especially stupid. Most of the complaints on Genshin's combat animations feel like they're coming from people who don't understand that Genshin is a very casual game. Like, imagine watching a Jackie Chan movie and he just throws out a Kamehameha. Okay, that'd admittedly be really cool, but you get the point. I'm not asking Jackie Chan to throw out Kamehamehas. Any media visually has to match its skill. I don't mean its power skill per se, because Genshin characters could very easily be in any of the games I'm gonna throw on screen. But Genshin's gameplay skill is what I mean. As established, Genshin is a very casual experience. That's why most of the events aren't combat events. Genshin is extremely approachable, so visually it has to be approachable as well. I do think they could go a little harder, but not too much, honestly. Like right now, it's not in a bad state. My most radical takes are all things revolving around the gacha system, which I can admit that these are things that would hurt mihoyo's finance, so they're not as liable to be taken seriously. Like, I think pity should be 10 less for every single type of banner, but let's be real. I do think the Chronicled banner is pretty scummy, in that your guarantees don't carry over. Like, that's really lame to me. But for the most part, I'm pretty content with the game. Let me know how you guys feel in the comments. I'll read all of them.